So, if you're a business owner trying to grow, scale, or break through to the next level, this show is for you. Welcome to the Boss Success Show, where we bring you real strategies, real stories, and real success. I'm Jason Delumpa, so let's get into it. Today, I'm joined by Derek Van Ness, founder of Big Life Financial. He helps entrepreneurs, business owners rethink wealth, gain more control financially, and build lives rooted in freedom instead of pressure. Derek, it's great to have you here.
Happy to be here, Jason. Appreciate you having me on.
Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you. So, Derek, I'd love to begin with your story. For people meeting you for the first time, who is Derek Van Ness?
Well, that's a big question, but I like to think that I'm someone who loves life, loves options, loves being able to explore the world. And as that manifests in business, I kind of realized early on that you got to have money to do that, right? So I figured out that you got to learn the money game, and started into that as early as I could, right? I went to school, got a degree. When I came out of school, I was kind of scared to sell. And I knew if I ever wanted to own my own business and do my own thing, I'm going to have to somehow, some way sell stuff, right? And so I took the hardest job I could find, door-to-door sales. And I did that for a couple of months and I was pretty successful at it, but I'm not gonna lie, it still scared the heck out of me. Um, and then I went from that to a phone sales job. And the phone sales job, I was like, okay, instead of selling to like regular people, I'm selling to business owners. And the interview for the job, actually, Jason, you're gonna appreciate this, was here's the phone book. Actually, it was the Dun& and Bradstreet book. And they said, you need to make 200 phone calls a day or you're fired at the end of the day. And we have a call counter. Like they posted the numbers every day at noon so you could see where you're at 3. And if at 5 you had not made 200 phone calls in your first year, you were just fired. So on the spot. So I took that job because it scared the heck out of me. But I think I've always had this idea that you have to do the hard work to develop the skills if you want to have the life you want to have, right? If you want to live that big life. And that's part of why I called my company Big Life Financial is it's not about how much money you have. Honestly, it's really about the life. It's just without money, it's pretty tough to have the life you want to live in today's world, right? So I went from that, I did that for a couple of years and just realized I need to do my own thing. So I started flipping houses and I was very successful at that. I flipped a couple hundred houses in Los Angeles from 2001 to about 2008. You may recognize that year. That was the year of the mortgage crash, right? And at that point, got totally wiped out. I was actually in a snowboarding accident, laying in the hospital, trying to recover when the market crashed, and I had no way out. I had 16 flips going at the time, and
Wow.
we were able to sell some, but the market basically dropped 30 or 40% almost overnight, and I was upside down in a bunch of them. You've heard the story before. It ended in disaster. I lost $2.5 million. Um, Lost my house, lost my car, lost pretty much everything. And that was a huge reset for me. And I got to tell you, Jason, for me, you learn so much more from failure than you do from success. I'm glad I got a lot of that kind of failure out of the way on the front end because, it does take a lot of failing to succeed. And I think people forget that sometimes. But I learned a lot of lessons in the 18 months it took for me to go all the way to zero during the 08, 09 thing. Um,
Wow.
what,
I
Go
just want to
ahead.
interject. That's I love your story. I mean, that's really interesting how you said you had to go cold call, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, and would you say that shaped you early on to build the skill sets to build thick skin when you did fail, and that led you to the big life that you live today?
Yeah, I really do think it did because what I learned, so I went back years later and I did all the math, and I probably did about 50,000 cold calls in three
Right.
years. And you just learn that a lot of the no's you get just aren't personal. They just don't need your service. The time isn't right. One reason or another, they have another relationship. So I just learned really early on that a no doesn't affect me personally. Early when I first started, if somebody said no, I feel like, oh, they don't like me, I'm not good enough, whatever,
Right.
and that just wasn't true, and it still isn't, right? So when you're playing that particular game, and there's all kinds of things you can do with marketing to change this, but if you're just doing the cold calling, it's just a raw numbers game, right? I have to talk to enough people that I can find the ones that need this right now and don't have it figured out. And that was a huge lesson for me that sometimes it's not about anything other than just volume, right? Like Grant Cardone's gotten rich on the idea of the 10x rule, right? And going 10x. And his whole thing is if you think it's going to take you 100 phone calls, do 1,000. Just do so much work that even if you suck, you're going to succeed. And certainly we want to work smarter, not just harder. But I think a lot of people try and be too smart and they don't do enough hard work. So they were trying to make two phone calls to the perfect person instead of just making 100 to random people and getting three, right? And I think sometimes people get that flipped. So I think it takes both. Obviously, you want to work as smart as you can, but that job certainly taught me what does it look like to start from zero, from absolute scratch and build a business, right? Calling every single day, calling hundreds of people. And out of 200, on a good day, I might get four or five who are saying, yeah, I'm interested, or you know what, call me next month. We're getting close. And you build the database and you continue to follow up. So it really taught me how to stay in touch with people, how to follow up, how to be organized, taught me how to read credit reports, taught me how to read financials because we were looking at people's profit and loss, we were looking at tax returns. So it really taught me, even though I had a business degree, it taught me the language of business. And it taught me when I look at a tax return, what's on here? Or I look at a profit and loss, what are banks looking for? So I got a ton of really good experience there. Even though, I mean, it was a pressure cooker environment, right? Like you had to hit a quota every single month. If you didn't hit your quota for a certain amount of time, they were going to fire you. You had to make your calls every day. So I was in there at 7:30 and I was living in LA at the time. So I had a commute of about an hour. So I had to leave my house about 6:30, 6:45, be there at 7:30 to be on the phone at 8. And then they did this whole thing where they were like, I mean, work's over at 5, but if you're successful, you'll do all your follow up after 5, and then you end up staying till
Right.
7, right? And then you drive home and you're home at 8. So I'm like working from like 6:30, 6:45 a.m. till 8 o'clock, 5 days a week. And I learned a lot of work ethic. Not that I didn't have
Yeah.
it before, but yeah, that was to your point was really formative to me because it was like
Mm,
this is what work looks like. This is what it means to show up and crush it every day.
right.
And I was successful. I saw that all this work, like in the beginning, I often use the phrase every mountain's built of grains of sand because in that business, every
Yes.
person you called was a grain of sand, a grain of sand, a
I
grain of
love it.
sand.
Yeah.
Over time, that's what builds the mountain. You know, people are
Hmm.
often looking for the boulders, and I'm not saying those don't exist, but I have found that if you're out there and you're willing to go after all the grains of sand, you do find some rocks and boulders along the way. But if you're only looking for boulders, it's tough because when you find one, you haven't had much practice with the grains of sand, so you may not be ready for it, right? And so
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of building those skills, building the reps, just like sports, just like music, just like any other skill there is out there. You have to run the miles. And thankfully, I ran a lot of miles in those first couple of years, and I actually had a similar experience when I came out of real estate and went back to work. When I started working with the one of the groups that you worked with, where you and I met. Um, I was on stage with someone else and he spoke and I was there a little bit and I think I sent from that speaking engagement 225 appointments. I was doing an appointment every half hour from 8:30 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. with a half hour for lunch so I could breathe. But I did that for like 3.5 months, 5 days a week. And that was we were doing some insurance sales at the time, life insurance strategy stuff. And then if I
Sorry
had
to,
to do applications, I did them
yeah.
after all of that hours.
I just want to interject really quick because you made a powerful point and most people miss that. So when you talked about the grains of sand, what I call like brick by brick,
Hmm.
not people avoid that, right? But you didn't. You just took one step at a time, one step forward at a time. And that led you to the speaking on stages, booking 200 plus appointments in one day, right? So it built that strength, that perseverance. And I mean, would you say that's one of the experiences early on that influenced your mindset?
100%. I mean, so you can go too far into the hustle culture, the hard work culture, right? Like where you go too much and you grind yourself to a nub. But I think I just subscribe to the idea, Jason, that before you're good at something, you're going to be bad at it. And the only way to go from bad to good is
Right.
a ton of reps, a ton of hard work, right? And listen, if you're passionate about what you're doing, um,
Mm.
then it doesn't feel like work. Just like if you want to be a great, you're a kid, you want to be a great basketball player, and you're practicing dribbling and you're practicing shooting and you're running all, running ladders and doing all the things. It's super hard work, but it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like passion. And when I got really clear that what we're doing, when I came out of the real estate business, a friend of mine hired me and got me into helping business owners. He's like, "You've owned a business, you understand the financial piece, you've done investing, you know insurance and you're licensed." He's like, "I really want you to come and help coach my clients." And so he taught me a lot of structures, and that job was super formative to where I am. But at the end of the day, because when I got present to the fact that what we do for business owners is we help them take something that is basically a really high pressure job and turn it into freedom, right? We teach them how do you turn your business income into lasting wealth. All of a sudden, I became super passionate. So all the work, all the reps, all the bricks that you're talking about didn't feel like this is something I had to do, that was like, this is something I want to master. This is something I want to be so good at that
Right.
I can change people's lives, because otherwise, why am I here? What am I doing all this for? There's a ton of ways to make money in the world. I needed to find something not just that I was passionate about, but that was meaningful to me and like filled my cup every day. Because if you do
Right.
work that you love, it re-energizes you, right? It's not like
Mhm.
something that just constantly depletes you through effort. It's something that, yes, you're putting out the effort, but it's like it's the battery's recharging itself because you're getting the fulfillment along the way. And that makes it sustainable to work at really high levels for long periods of time.
That is awesome. Uh, what first pulled you into wealth strategy?
Honestly, so when I became a house flipper, I became pretty interested in wealth strategy, right? Because I was like, oh, I can see like inside of real estate how I can get my dollars working multiple ways, and I can get appreciation and depreciation. I can get cash flow. I can get tax breaks, all this stuff at the same time. I was like, this is really cool, right? And I was a millionaire at the time, as far as net worth and everything. So I was like, okay, I need to protect this. So I got into estate planning. But then you realize, okay, I need to have cash for this, and you have to start understanding cash flow, money coming in, money going out. How do I manage all this? Because when you're in real estate, you're dealing with a lot of dollars. So I sort of became interested in all of it because I had to. And once again, I was using all of that to, create freedom. So I had things like season tickets to the Lakers when I was living in LA, and we did trips to Europe and lots of fun stuff that I was in my early 30s, and I was like, this is really cool. I mean, worked my tail off for it, but this is what I've been working so hard for, right? So I started to see the fruits of those labors. And then, of course, when '08 happened, all that kind of went away and I had to start over. Um, but I
Did you?
got into
Yeah.
finance because my friend brought me into it. And I
I
was
see.
like, this is something I'm interested in because I have been the client on the other side. I didn't have this education. And when '08 came, it wiped me out because I wasn't prepared. So I had a really strong why when this opportunity came up. And I said, you know what? That is something worth spending a lot of time on and getting good at.
Thanks for sharing that. Did you see something broken in a traditional finance? Like when did this become a mission for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what I learned working with my friend, and I had always kind of thought this is, and '08 reinforced it, like the traditional financial model of like work a job, stick it in a 401k or an IRA. We'll see you at 65 and it's going to be great. Like I've done the math a
Right.
hundred times. Like that whole thing doesn't math. Some people don't realize, Jason, is that they talk about the stock market. It goes up and it goes down and does all these things, but on average, you get 6, 7, 8%, depending on who you ask. Here's the problem. People think that because you're earning an average of 6 or 7 or 8%, that when you get to retirement, you can pull 6, 7, 8% out. That's not actually true. What people don't realize is when you get to retirement and you have to take income from a stock market portfolio, you can only pull 3 to 4% safely because of volatility. And I'll explain that a little bit further. But at the end of the day, that means if you have $1 million in the market, it's only going to produce 30 to $40,000 a year for you, and you still have to pay taxes on that. That's
Mm,
not a lot of money, right? And
right.
think about it. The person who can save enough to end up with 1 million is probably used to living on a whole lot more than 30 to 40, right? And so
Mm,
I've mathed it all out, and it doesn't work, right, for people. Even if you end up with 2 million, the person who can get to 2 million in the market isn't going to want to live on 60 to 80,000 less taxes per year, right? So the
right.
whole thing, so I could see this doesn't work. There's got to be a better way. And there are quite a few tools that make it a lot better. There's strategies using multiple asset classes when you start to put different things together that don't move or what's called not correlated, like when the market's down, the other things aren't down, and you can balance this out. And this is what the super wealthy, the Ray Dalios of the world teach, or like how the the universities like Harvard and Yale and Stanford, how they manage their money, because those are
Right.
pretty smart people. Uh, they build a lot more than that outside of something like the market. So I could see that was broken, and we wanted to help people have a solution for that. For business owners, how it's broken, Jason, because I know that's who you work with and it's who I work with. The thing that's broken for business owners is they make money and they reinvest in the business, which is great. But they reinvest and reinvest and reinvest, and they only reinvest in the business and maybe do this much outside of it. Here's the problem
Mm,
with that. You're never going to get a better rate of return than you will investing in yourself and your business. I fully believe that. However, there comes a point where you're making enough with the business that now you need to peel some off, because if you only reinvest in the business, I think of it like the collegiate athlete, right? The basketball player, the football player, they they do run the laps, they do the nutrition, they get up early, they do all this stuff, and then their senior year they blow out their knee and they don't ever get the payday, right? And a lot of business owners do that. They reinvest in the business and then they don't know how to build a business that sells, and they don't. Like statistically, like only like 70% of businesses won't even sell. People will just close the doors. So if that's where you're building up all your wealth and then you don't get to sell it, or you have to sell it for way less than you think it's worth, that's what's broken for business owners. They don't understand how to translate business income or business equity into something that can serve them after they retire,
I see.
or how to build the business properly, right? And so
Yeah.
that piece is really broken for business owners. I have a ton of people who have these great businesses, but they're on a financial treadmill.
Mhm.
They're always re Yeah, so what a lot of business owners don't know how to do is build a business that sells for money. And even if they do, they don't know how to invest after that because they've been keeping everything in the business. So you can imagine, let's say you're successful and you do sell the business and you get 1, 2, 3, 5, $10 million, but you don't have any real investing experience. I'm here to tell you, the sharks are circling and they can smell blood in the water because you're an amateur,
Mm,
right? With a bunch of money. It's like lottery winners. They get all this money. They don't know how to manage money. What happens? They destroy their own life.
right.
Their brother-in-law shows up and he's like, dude, give me 500,000. Let's start a brewery. This is awesome. And you're
Mm.
thinking, well, do you know how to brew beer? And they're like, no, but I know how to drink it, bro. It'll be awesome. Right? And 2 years
Yeah.
later, all your money's gone and the brewery's out of business. And these kinds of things happen all the time. And so that part of the financial world is broken, Jason. Like business owners aren't being taught how to turn their business into wealth. Regular W-2 people are being pushed into things that the math just doesn't work. And
Right.
we can see the statistics. Most people cannot retire comfortably at age 65 without massively reducing their standard of living. And I'm not saying you can't do that. It's just not what I would choose.
So there's another part of owning a business.
Hmm. Which part? What are you talking about?
The part where you strategically invest in other assets or
Hmm.
wealth strategies, tools to for retirement or that long-term wealth creation, right? It's just not the business. Business is just a vehicle as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
eventually you want to think of your business as one of your investments, like probably your biggest investment. So it
Mm,
creates cash flow, creates
yes.
money, but you want to take chips off the table as you're winning. You're making money. We just need to pull some of that money off, pull some of that money off, pull some
I
of that
see.
money off systematically and as automatically as you can.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily love 401ks and IRAs, but one thing they do really well is they do get people to save. And we all know people who are living paycheck to paycheck, maybe even have tons of credit card debt, but they got a bunch of money in their IRA because it's been happening on autopilot. And that's one of the secrets to building wealth is you need to systematize saving money. And when I say saving, it could go into investments, it could go into other things, but like taking it off the table, out of your hands, and putting it to work elsewhere. And if you do that on autopilot, like I'll just be honest with you, I have over the time as my income's gone up, I've consistently done this. And I mean, I save more than six figures a year on autopilot, right? Like
Nice.
if I don't even pull a dollar out of my bank account on purpose and put it to work, which I do, but if I didn't do that, still over six figures a year is getting put away to build wealth for me, right?
Yeah.
In allocated and growth things. Um, and to your point, I know you like real estate and some of these other things. That could go to real estate. That could go into the stock market. It could go into private equity. It could go into debt funds. It could go into private notes. It could go into a hundred other things. And you probably want to get a professional advisor. We have a team that does this kind of stuff for our clients, but you want to get a professional advisor to help you allocate that money properly and really someone who understands that because you're probably never going to be a master investment advisor, right? Like unless that's your profession, you want to learn
Right.
enough to know why you're doing what you're doing, but you really do need someone on your team to help you with that. But the key here, if you never make that transition, and I do think for business owners, that transition probably starts at once you're making 120,000 a year. So think $10,000 a month coming in. You want to start peeling off, maybe start with 10, 15. I like people to get to 20 or 25% of their take home is getting set aside, right? You start where you can, start at 10%. So as you're making that money, it's just automatically getting saved into a brokerage account or a life insurance or a high yield savings or wherever you're putting it to start, get that money going. And then as you make more, you save more, right?
Right. Yeah, you
And
said
makes a big
systematically,
difference.
so you want to set up systems. I've learned that
Yeah.
the wealthy, intelligent people, they already know where their money's going once they get it, right?
Yeah, I have something I call the extra dollars allocation system. So as your income grows, like how do you deviate or I'm sorry, disperse that money, right? Like a certain amount to taxes, a certain amount to lifestyle, a certain amount to growth and wealth and sinking fund and other kinds of things. But ultimately, like every dollar, like once you're past your basic needs, right? I got to pay my mortgage, I got to pay my insurance, I got to buy food, things that everybody has. But like once you're past what I call your how we like to live budget, your normal living standard,
Mm-hmm.
then as more money comes in, you've got a plan for every dollar that comes in proportionally. You know where it's going. Otherwise, people have a tendency, the money builds up in their account and they just spend it all, right?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, if you have a bunch of money sitting in the bank, it's easy to figure out ways to spend it because there's lots of cool stuff, lots of cool trips, lots of stuff for your kids, lots of cool gadgets and technology. The money will disappear. And as the saying goes, if you don't have a plan for your money, someone else
Mm,
does. Social media and TV and all of that, that's what all those commercials are, man. They're getting you to,
yeah.
they're telling you a plan for your money.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Now, Derek, was there a defining moment where you realized that this was about more than money?
Definitely. I mean, as I've gotten older, certainly, and as you make more money, as you get out of survival and into, hey, I actually have some extra money here to do things with, you start to realize that, to me, people are far more important than money, right? Like,
Mm,
and so what do I want the money for? I want the money for experiences with people that I care about. I want the money to take care of people. I want the money to support causes and things that I think matter in the world. But also, I realize there's me, then there's my team, right? So we just got back from a trip to Las Vegas where I took my whole team and all their spouses.
Nice.
There was about 25 of us there, um, including our some of our accounting team came down from our tax business. And just hearing the stories of how what we do has impacted them as a human being and us investing in them and us helping them grow as human beings. So I realized, oh, it's me, then it's my team we're impacting, and then it's all of our clients we're impacting, right? And of course, I
Right.
see all the stories every day of how people went from being afraid of money and not knowing what was going on and scared of taxes and walking around basically with a blindfold on to clearly understanding where's my money coming from, where is it going, how much is taxes, how much is mine, what do I do with it when I have extra, how do I start to build this, how much exactly do I need to be able to have the retirement that I want to have and all, or pay my kids college or whatever, um, all of that. So when you see the real stories, and this is why I went from real estate back into working with people, is
Mhm.
the impact you have on people when you change someone's life. I don't know, for me, it just feels really good. And once you do that, once you have somebody cry on the phone with you or cry on Zoom with you because
Wow.
they can finally see the light, and that's
Yep.
happened. I don't know if hundreds is the right word, but definitely more than 100 times where people have shed tears because they can see it. Like
Right.
suddenly this thing that's been so scary and so mysterious to them is clear enough that they can see where they're going and they feel like they have control and the ability to impact their own life. Like
Yes.
suddenly they've taken the wheel of the car, and now they get to drive is huge. And once you see that, you can't unsee that every single one of these people is a human being, just like my mother, my father, my sister, my best friend,
Right.
and I'm helping them to get rid of, in many cases, the scariest thing in their life, which is money, right? Like get it
Right.
figured out. So once you have that happen, like it is definitely about more than money. Sure, I have to make a living, right? That was always there because if I can't do that, then I can't continue to do my work. But yeah, pretty quick,
Yeah.
I saw
So
that.
yeah, so it's money just a tool to help you serve more people, right?
For sure. A lot of
Yeah.
people get it backwards, right? People are
Yeah.
here to create money. That's not how I see it. I see it as money is a tool to help serve more people, myself included, right? I'm one of those people. My family is part of that. As Jordan Peterson likes to say, take care of yourself like you would take care of someone that you care about, right? It's
Yeah.
not about self-sacrifice and depleting myself.
Right.
Deplete myself, I have less to give. I make less money. I have less to share with
True.
others. So I have to do both. But yes.
Absolutely. That's meaningful, Derek. Because many people think finance is only numbers, but often it's really about peace, choices, and freedom. Um,
100%.
yeah.
I I talk about something, Jason, like everybody talks about ROI,
Yeah.
return on investment.
Right.
I believe the better metric is ROE, return on emotion. How do you
Mm.
feel about your life? The whole reason you want money is you want to feel better about your life, right?
Right.
You want to have more special moments with your family. You want to have more experiences, more freedom, less trapped, more options, all of that. So I always tell people if you make more money, but your quality of life is lower,
Mm-hmm.
trade. I would take less money for a higher quality of life because that's the whole reason you want the money is for a higher
Right.
quality of life. So quality of life is the actual game. Money is a major piece on the board of that game.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't let the money drive the quality of life. The quality of life needs to determine the money decisions. I had a client, they made, $500,000 a year. They had a couple little rental properties, and this particular person and their spouse used to fight every single month about these rental properties that they made like 300 bucks a month from, like 100 bucks each per door, right? And they just fought. I just told him, I was like, hey man, you probably just need to sell the real estate. You and your wife are
Wow.
fighting about this every
Yeah.
single. And it is like such a pittance. I know everybody's told you you need to own real estate. For you guys in this situation, this is a bad deal because they were lower income properties. The people always paid late. There was always repairs. It was just all this friction. And his
Hmm.
life, and his wife's life were so much worse. And they dearly loved each other. I mean, should have heard this guy gush about his
Yeah,
wife. This was the one thing they always fought about. I'm just like, get rid of the real estate.
right.
You might make a little more money, get a few tax breaks, but if you get a divorce from the person you love, is that a very good trade? Come
Yeah.
on.
There's a saying that goes, if it costs you your peace, it costs too much. Something like that.
For sure. Like ultimately, we're all trying to be happy, whatever that means to you, right? But it's really about quality of life, fulfillment, peace, the ability to spend your time and energy in the way that you want to. Those are pretty priceless to have. And so as money serves that, that's great. But if the money's taking away from that, you probably want to look at that and fix it.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Um, Now you work with successful people regularly. How many of them still feel stuck, and why is that?
Um, that's a great question. I would say this, the people who remain stuck are the ones who don't want to change, right? Like they want to
Mm.
continue to do it their way. They just want a better result. And they think by hiring us or working with us, we're going to tell them, oh, you're doing everything right. Just it's going to be fine. And so those are the people that really struggle. Like they hire us because they're tired of overpaying taxes, right? And we're like, well, you can do this. Well, I don't want to do that. You can do this. Well, I don't think I want to do that. You can do this. Well, I don't think I qualify for that. And it's like, well, if you've got it all figured out, just keep doing it your way and you'll get the same result and it'll be fine. But I
Right.
do run into that occasionally. Or the big thing, Jason, is people who come and expect us to take ownership of their own money in their own life, right? Like, hey, you tell me how much I owe, you tell me how much to save, you tell me where I should invest. We can help with all those things, but the people who take ownership of their own finances, their own money, and use us as a tool, as a mentor, as a guide, they're the ones that win because everybody's situation is different. And I can't see the this is the story that almost every entrepreneur has. You wake up in the middle of the night, your mind's doing all this math, you're stressed out about something, whether it's payroll or rent's due, or you got to have this hard conversation or whatever. Like, I don't know what that is for each individual. And I don't know how to make the little adjustments. We give people the template. Here's how to save, here's how to transfer money, here's what you should be doing. But they also have to adjust it to their own life. And the people who don't do that, they don't do the homework, they don't think it through, they don't actually ingest it and apply it to their life, they continue to struggle with it, right? Because they're only doing the bare minimum and they're not really applying it to their life. They're like going through the motions. So that does happen sometimes. Most of our clients we vet pretty well, and they're like, hey, man, what I'm doing isn't working, or it's not working as well as I want it to. I want to go to the next level, and they're open and they're coachable. Those people do great. But people who don't apply it or think they know better than you do, like I always say,
Mm.
the five most dangerous words in the world, Jason, are I already know that, or I already do
Mm.
that. If someone
Right.
tells you I'm already doing the thing, but they're not getting the result, then they're doing the thing wrong, right? And they think
Right.
they're doing it right, and that's what cuts them off from change. It's the Mark Twain quote, right? It's
Hmm.
not the things that you don't know that hurt you, it's the things you think you know that just ain't so,
Mm.
right? When you think you know something, but you're actually wrong, you're not open to change. You think you got to
Right.
figure it out, right?
Exactly.
And that's where people get stuck is the know-it-alls.
Hmm.
Um, they're not willing to change and they wonder why they're still stuck.
Right. Exactly. Their mindset, um, them not committing or putting in the work, it's no different from like going to a gym.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it doesn't have to happen overnight, just like the gym, right? You don't go work out for
Right.
a week and see massive results. I mean, you can in finance see big results really fast, especially if somebody's doing some really messy stuff. You got a
Right.
bunch of bad debt or whatever. But really it is grain by grain, right? Day by day
Hmm.
at the gym, um, building a relationship with your family, showing up every day, doing the hard work, taking care of them when it's hard, being there, having the conversations, touching base, making sure they know they're loved, all of that stuff, right? That just layers in. It's not a one day thing. It's it's every day.
Right.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff. What does financial bondage actually look like in real life? For example, living month to month, constant pressure to produce.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of my clients, financial bondage looks a little different because
Hmm.
most of my clients make at least 350, $400,000 a year, right? Because that's when taxes get expensive. They're like, hey, I need a new solution, and they find us, right? So 350 to maybe 2 million a year is our client base. Like for your average person, if you're just trying to make rent and keep the car running and that kind of stuff, that is a different kind of financial bondage, right? But to me, real financial bondage
Hmm.
is feeling like you're in the struggle or what I call on the financial treadmill, meaning you're running, but you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Um, Financial bondage is being on the treadmill and not having any hope of that ever changing. I think that's where people get really discouraged. If you have hope that things can get better, you can keep running. If you feel like I'm just going to be on this forever, to me, that's what bondage looks like is I'm trapped and there's no way to escape. And the truth is there's always a way to escape. A lot of times it just involves doing something that you don't want to do or you're scared of doing or you haven't done before or that you don't know that you have as an option. And so for anybody who's in that boat, you really need to invest in your time. Honestly, invest your time and energy in learning more. Obviously, anybody listening to your podcast probably already has that mindset, probably already reads books and so forth. But if you do find yourself, stuck, you have to go back and challenge all of the things that you think are true. Because if you're not getting a result, it's because you're doing something that isn't doing the thing you think it should, right? You think you're doing it right and you're not. And I definitely went through a few years of that where I'm like, I'm doing all the right things, but I'm not succeeding. What's the deal here? And that was really frustrating for me, right? Um, and and the reality is you have to go back and check your bases. He talks about it in Atlas Shrugged, if you're familiar with that book, Francisco d'Anconia, and he says something to this something in the sense of, if you're not getting the outcome you want, you have to go back and check your basis. You
Right.
built something on a faulty foundation, and you just don't realize it. You think that foundation's solid, and it's not. So anybody out there who's stuck, you can get unstuck. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but you need to look at, if I could get out of this, what would need to change? And then you need to be willing to make that change. And also, if you're in something and you can't figure out what's broken, you do have to go back to every single thing that you think is true and you have to vet it again, right? You've hallucinated like AI. You got to have yourself double check yourself, get an outside perspective, something like that.
So, Derek, you talk about going back and examining. It sounds like going back to the basics and checking their foundation, right? Because when I talk to, for example, restaurant owners, they're doing a lot of stuff to bring in top line revenue, but sometimes their foundation is leaking
Mhm.
and it's not all there. Is that the true for when you talk to people that you help?
For sure. I think of it, wealth is like a bucket, right? And the revenue that comes in is water going into the bucket. Um, and obviously there's holes in the bucket. And a lot of people, I mean, there's holes you know about. You know about taxes, you know about expenses, you know about employee and food costs and all of that. But there's a lot of holes people don't realize are there and they're leaking money. And that's usually like, honestly, restaurants are a low margin business, right? Meaning that for the amount of money that goes through, there's only a small amount that's profit. So
Hmm.
it's really important in those types of businesses that people have a very clear understanding of their numbers, of their costs, and they're really working that. I work with dentists, even though dentistry is a high margin business. Honestly, the difference between the dentist just getting by and the dentist who's killing it is like 1,000 little paper cuts of like how
Wow.
much their supplies are, how much their labor is, how many they can get that extra patient or two in per day, right? Which is 30, like times three doctors, which is 60 or 70 more patients than the other guy. Um, it really is a game of very small cuts that add up to the big slice, right? And so, yeah, for a lot of business owners, that's the difference in tightening it up, right? That the difference between barely surviving and really making huge profits. Because listen, if you're running 2 million, 3 million, 4 million through a restaurant, the difference between 4% margins and 10% margins might be 160 to 400,000 of profit on a $4 million revenue business, right? Like that's a huge difference.
Right. Wow. Yeah, and they might be overlooking those little small cuts you talked about.
Yeah, and so, I restaurants isn't my specialty. We've worked with some, but the truth of the matter is it's the tighter the margins on the business, the more you have to pay attention. Like
Mm,
if you're a consulting company and it's just you and an assistant and you charge a lot of money, like it's super high margin, you can screw a lot of stuff up and be kind of wasteful and still be profitable. But those kinds of businesses are very, very tight. You have to really know your numbers. And if you don't know your numbers, you need to get someone who knows them and have them teach you as well so that it's not just them, it's you, because they're never going to care about your numbers like you do.
absolutely. Awesome. How much of wealth building is mindset versus math?
Uh, a very large portion of it. I mean, the math matters, but the math follows the mindset. If you don't
Right.
have the mindset, you don't go out and create the money in the first place, right? And you and I, we alluded to identity earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Your identity is, I've heard it put this way, and I really like this analogy. It's like the thermostat for your own success that you have in particular areas of your life, right? And so if your thermostat's set at 70 degrees and you start to become more successful than that, but your identity is like, I don't deserve this success, this is too much, you'll actually self-sabotage and come back to 70 degrees. Now, on the
Interesting.
other side, if you start to fall down and make mistakes, you'll pull your act together and get yourself back up to that 70-degree mark. And so, a huge part of it is building wealth is you have to turn up your internal thermostat. You need to go from 70 to 80 to 85 to 90. Um, and you have to do work to believe that you deserve that, that this is who you truly are. And a lot of that is just being in integrity. So we talked about doing the work. Part of what doing the work does is saying, I deserve this. Like if you get something and you didn't have to give up or make any sacrifices for it, a lot of times mentally your identity says, I'm not worthy of this. I don't deserve this. And I know a
Right.
lot of people who've become very successful and they feel like I don't want to use the word failure. They feel like they're an imposter. Like we've heard about imposter syndrome. They don't
Yep.
think they deserve it because they didn't do enough work to be here, right? And that really messes with people and it causes them to do dumb things. But the people who have done the work along the way, they feel like, yeah, I worked my butt off. I deserve every bit of this, right? And so their thermostat stays at that higher level and that's staying in integrity, not cheating people, treating people well, doing things right. When you feel like you're cutting corners and you're kind of getting ahead by cheating, it does weigh on you eventually, right? It
Yep.
catches up with you. So I'm a big believer in do the right thing. It doesn't mean you have to work yourself to death. Getting help, hiring people, getting leverage, all that stuff is totally legit because
Right.
it's necessary. But if you feel like you're cheating the system, you need to pay attention to that and say, am I cheating the system? Am I just being really smart? Or, am I pushing the ethics here? But eventually that's going to get to you. So I think identity of who you think you are and what you think you deserve, that's what creates the money. And then the math comes in of how you manage it, how you allocate that capital. Where do we put that money back to work? Do we put it back in the business? Do we hire more people? Do we buy
Right.
other businesses? Do we buy real estate? Do we invest? Do we save? What do we do with all of that? That's where the math really starts to come in. But you have to create the money first. And identity is the thing that gives you the belief so that you will go out and do the things to create the money in the first place.
Absolutely. That's a powerful distinction because often people chase income, right? When the real
Mhm.
issue may be the behavior, right? Like you mentioned. Um, Sometimes people keep pouring water into a leaking bucket. They don't need more water, they need to fix the leak.
Yeah, and I think identity can be a huge leak, or identity can cause you to take a nail and make more holes in the bucket
Hmm.
because you don't think you deserve it. And sometimes that looks like overcompensation, right? People who are just starting to get rich and they go buy a bunch of fancy stuff, maybe a car that's a little too expensive and, all the name brand stuff and whatever. And what that really is them putting holes in the bucket because they believe they're not good enough. And so they have to show the world they're good enough
Mm.
because they don't believe it inside, right? And there's like all these things
Wow.
that happen psychologically, and that's why I really believe it's essential that you do the work along the way so that you
Mm.
don't feel that way. You're
Right.
like, hey, even if people don't think I deserve this, I know the truth, man. I ran the miles, I lifted the weights, I did the
Yes.
work, I deserve this, and I'm good with it. And it doesn't matter what they say because I know it's true.
Absolutely. So if you're watching this or listening to this, ask yourself, where is money leaking in my life right now? Um, so if someone realizes they're stuck, how do they start thinking differently?
I think listening to shows like this, I'm going to be honest with you. I do think there's a bunch of hyperbole and a bunch of garbage out there on the internet, but there's a bunch of good stuff too. But reading good books and going back to, the foundations of how, like, read biographies. How did successful people become successful? Read the stories, see the struggles, understand what it really takes. And then honestly, picture what you want for your life and start doing the things that give you the experience and build the skill sets so that that can one day be true. If you want to invest in real estate, you need to probably do some training, read some books, and then as soon as you feel like, hey, I'm starting to get the hang of this, you need to start going through Craigslist, making phone calls, trying just getting yourself into that position, even if you're not ready yet. You got to start somewhere, and getting experience is the key, right? And I think that's the way out is you just have to do the thing and probably do it badly so that at some point you can go from doing it badly to doing it okay, and then from doing it okay to doing it well, and then you'll start to get results. But life is not like a video game. Like in video games, you start off at level one and you get to fight the really simple guys and beat them, and then you go to level two and then you fight the level two guys. Life is you start at level one, you don't get to get any points until level 50. So you have to go from level
Mm.
one to level 50, getting your butt kicked, doing everything wrong, feeling inadequate, learning, growing, and not seeing really any financial rewards in a lot of cases until you get to level 50. And that's
Wow.
just the reality of it is
Right.
the world doesn't care that you're new. It's not just going to throw you a bone. It's like, yeah, you're not good enough. Like everybody listening to this, would you read a book that was really crappy and was going to take you 10 hours because it was the guy's first book? He needs a break. Are
Hmm.
you going to spend your time and money to read a crappy book because the guy's new? No. You're gonna be like, it's a crappy book. I don't care if you're new or not. I'm not going to give you my time, right? And so if you want to be an author, you have to write a book good enough that people choose that over every other option at some point in their life
Mm.
and are willing to give it the time and money. It's the same thing in anything in business. Your restaurant has to be good enough that people say, tonight, out of all the restaurants I can go to, I want to choose you. And the only
Right.
reason they're going to do that is yours is good enough that at one point it's the one they choose, right? If your restaurant is terrible, I would not count on staying in business because people are like, well, he's new in business, and even though the food kind of sucks and it's a little bit, a little bit expensive, people aren't going to make that choice, right? They don't think that way. People are, I want to go out to dinner at a place that I'm going to enjoy. I'm here to, have a great time or have great food or enjoy my family's company. They don't care. They want to spend their money or their time on the best option available. So you have to get good enough that sometimes you're the best option available for people. And that's kind of hard to hear, but it's the reality of it in today's world.
Kind of like sports to be the best.
Right. Nobody's going to let you win a Super Bowl just because, well, those guys always lose. Let's just let them win the Super Bowl this year.
Right.
No, hell no.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in the real world. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just have to focus on getting good enough that you win at least some of the time.
Absolutely. And keep getting better, right?
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
How should entrepreneurs think differently than employees?
I think entrepreneurs have to think differently than employees because employees, a lot of them, they're just here to do a job. They're here to check a box. As an entrepreneur, you have to do more than that, and you have to think about the whole picture, not just one piece of the picture. And you have to always be looking ahead. I mean, I'm making decisions right now based on where are we going to be in 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. I'm laying the foundation, I'm hiring the people, I'm setting up the systems for all of that. And I think employees just don't, except for high, like C-level employees, they just don't think that way, right? They're trying to they show up at work and go, okay, what are we doing today? Right.
Right.
Whereas the business owner has to have that ahead. And I always joke and say that nobody prepared me for the amount of planning it takes to run a successful business. I was very much a doer growing up, because when you grow up, you start with the lower level jobs, which are the doing jobs. But the higher you move up the ladder, the more of the thinking and the
Right.
strategy and the philosophical, and you've got to really weigh out the ramifications and figure it all out for the doers, right? So that's a huge difference.
Yeah, that's important. Because because many businesses um still manage money like employees, would you say?
Yes, they're getting the same financial advice as a lot of employees, and so a lot of business owners do manage their money like employees because that's where they came from, right? And they
Right.
probably still have the same financial advisor. The truth is, at some point, you outgrow your financial team if that's who they're set up for as W-2s. You're going to probably need a better CPA, a better financial person, a better insurance person, a better attorney, a better estate planning person. It's just the reality of it, just like people go from high school coaches to college coaches to NFL coaches. I keep using the sports analogy because I hope that a lot of people can understand that, but it's the same thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it relates. Um, let's go one level deeper. How do wealthy people actually think?
Well,
Mhm.
there's a lot to that. I think the biggest thing of wealthy people, and I'll just kind of keep this simple today, is I think wealthy people think about creation. They don't just think about what is already in existence, right? They're looking at how do I create something new? How do I create something from nothing? How do I take something that's small and make it big? They're not thinking about just like keeping the status quo. They're always thinking about growth, always getting better, always going further. Um, and I think that's a huge difference is the ability to create new things or make existing things better is in the DNA, like to solve new problems or solve them at a higher level of an entrepreneur. Whereas I think a lot of employees aren't thinking that way. They're just thinking about how to check the boxes and do the thing they've been hired to do. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying all employees think that way, and I'm certainly not saying all business owners think that way, but I think wealthy people are always thinking in terms of creation.
One wealth habit to start now.
Automate savings.
One money myth to eliminate.
The stock market is the answer to retirement.
What do wealthy people understand early?
That with the right amount of education and work, they can accomplish nearly anything they want.
Best overlooked investment.
Your own education.
One word that defines success.
Peace.
Peace. Derek, I appreciate your time. This conversation went far beyond money. You shared wisdom around mindset, systems, freedom, and real wealth, what real wealth actually looks like. And I know a lot of people are going to benefit from this. So thank you so much. Where can people watching and or listening find you if they wanted to connect or ask you any questions?
Great question. I've got a YouTube channel with over 100 videos on there, ranging on a bunch of different topics over the last 5 or 6 years. Also, biglifefinancial.com is our website. We've got a free tax book on there with 16 ways to save taxes for you as a business owner. And Instagram. I do lots and lots of videos on Instagram, little 90-second videos with tips and things, but the deep stuff is on YouTube. A lot of those are between 15 and 75 minutes long. So some pretty good deep dives.
Excellent. Derek, thank you so much for adding value. We greatly appreciate you. I just want to end with this. Money is a tool, freedom is the goal. So if this conversation added value, like this video, subscribe to Boss Success Show, share it with someone building a business, and comment your biggest takeaway. This is the Boss Success Show where business owners grow into leaders. We'll see y'all next time, and thank you for tuning in, and God bless. Thank you,
All
Derek.
right. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it, man.